What's up YouTube? It's Coach Corey, and today I'm going to tell you guys how to get max keys in Robo Rumble every single time. So let's get into it. Alright, so Robo Rumble is out, and I want to tell you guys how to get max keys every single time. Now, in the gameplay, today's video, it's me on my free-to-play mini account, and we were able to very consistently get max keys every single time, and this is with different combinations of brawlers, all with free-to-play, non-max brawlers, at least on my side. I might have had one teammate who had a max brawler, or maybe two, I think once. Both of them were max, but otherwise it was non-max brawlers for the most part, so you don't need max brawlers to get max keys consistently. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys some really good tips on Robo Rumble, but first let's go over what sort of team comp you should be using. Now, for consistency purposes, I'm going to recommend that there's going to be one or two brawlers you're going to want to have every single time. The first one, the most important one in my opinion, is going to be Pam. Especially if you're just struggling to get max keys, Pam is going to be the most important brawler to have. Even if she's not max, and you're going to see me using a non-max Pam in this video too, you don't necessarily need to be max. It does help, but the main thing is her healing turret is really going to make it a lot easier to survive, because that's going to allow you to heal up even if you don't kill the robots before the next wave comes. Because if you don't, then you're not going to be able to take the time to heal, but with Pam, you'll be able to heal up and stay alive. So Pam is going to be really, really important. The other brawlers I'm going to recommend is Barley. Barley is probably the second most important brawler, but you don't necessarily need to have Barley. The other brawlers I'm going to recommend is going to be either a Colt, a Ricochet, or a Frank. Those are going to be your best other three brawlers. So you're probably going to want some combination like either Pam, Barley, Frank. You can go Pam, Barley, Colt, or Ricochet. You can even go Pam, Ricochet, and Colt, or you can even go like Pam, Frank, and then Colt or Ricochet. Those are all going to be really good team comps, and you don't necessarily need any one of them to be max. Okay, so let's go over some general Robo Rumble tips and how to get you closer to max time. And the max time is going to be 6:15. If you want to get max keys, you got to get 6:15. That's your goal. So first let's go over the first 5 minutes, and then you're going to act a little bit differently after that. Now, one thing to know in Robo Rumble is the boss spawns every 7 waves 3 times. So it spawns at wave 7, at wave 14, and at wave 21. And the robots spawn every 12 seconds. So every 12 seconds, it's going to be a new wave. Except every time there's a boss wave, I believe it takes 24 or 25 seconds for the next wave to come. Now, another thing to note in Robo Rumble is how the robots either like spawn and increase. It starts out it resets every boss wave. This is one thing to note. The amount of robots resets to 2 after every boss wave, and then every 2 waves, the amount of robots is going to increase by 1. So it's going to go 2 robots, and then 2 robots, and it's going to go 3, and then 3, and then 4, and then 4, 5, and then 5, etc. And then until it gets to a boss wave, and then it's going to reset back to 2. Now, what robots you get, whether it's going to be a shooter, a fast small robot, or a boxer, is going to be totally random. Now, if you just want to memorize when the boss is going to come, like the timing, it's going to be 1:17 is going to be the first boss. Second boss is going to come at about 3 minutes, maybe 3:01, and then the third boss is going to come at 4:45. Now, and those are going to be the only bosses. You're not going to get any more bosses in Robo Rumble. Now, first thing to note in Robo Rumble is those first 2 bosses, when you're dealing with the robots, you want to save your supers for the boss. You really should not need to use any of your supers unless it's like a turret, like a Pam turret, Jesse turret, Penny turret, whatever. You should not need to use any of your supers except for the first 2 bosses. So save your supers for those bosses, because you want to get those bosses down as quickly as possible. That way you're ready for the next wave. Because if you still have that boss robot up and you have robots coming in, you might be in a lot of trouble. Other tips for dealing with the boss. Now, I mean, if you're a Barley, you want to put that super as small as possible and get it where the boss is either stopped moving, maybe he's either stunned from a Frank, or he's shooting his rockets, or you're just delaying him at all. And if you have a Pam, try and deal with the boss and be in a place where you can also be healed up in the Pam healing station. That's going to make it really, really easy to deal with the boss. If you're able to stand in that healing station and attack the boss the whole time in that healing station, it's going to be honestly pretty easy to deal with the boss. If you're not going to be in a healing station, it might be a little more difficult. You might have to do a little ring around the rosy and make sure you're not taking too much damage from the boss going around walls. But at the same time, if you're going to be taking the boss around walls, you need to make sure your teammates can still shoot the boss. If you're in a situation where you're taking the boss around the walls and your teammates aren't able to hit the boss, you might end up taking too much time to deal with the boss, and you might have other robots spawning eventually, and then you have to deal with robots and the boss at the same time. Now, honestly, my best tip for Robo Rumble and getting a really good time is you want to funnel the robots as much as possible. And what I mean is you want to get the robots in one place. You want to get them all to go down the same lane. You want to get them all to go down the same path. That way, when you super, you're able to hit as many robots as possible. Now, this isn't always an easy thing to do. It's going to depend a lot on your map spawn, like what sort of spawn you get for where the walls are, what sort of map you get. It's going to be very dependent on that. But at the same time, you also want to make sure where you're positioned. That way you're able to try and get the robots to all come to you. You want to be, in general, all close to each other. And you also want to be careful to make sure that you're not going to have robots going around the wall one way and then robots going around the wall the other way. You want to try and get them all down the same path. I mean, essentially, you want to be having your Colt supers, your Rico supers, your Barley supers, hitting 3, 4, 5 robots at the same time. And then you want to be having that Pam turret behind a wall somewhere where it's going to be able to stay alive and it's not going to just go down right away. Now, there is a map exploit where if you get a certain map spawn, and if you have the team comp of Pam, Frank, and Barley, you can get a really, really amazing spawn. But that's basically a map exploit, and it really relies on getting that one exact map spawn. I'm not going to go over that today. If you guys want me to go over that, I can in a separate video. That's basically what you have to do if you want to get the best possible time, but you don't need to do that if you're just trying to get max keys. Now, you might find situations where you see a map spawn that looks pretty favorable towards being able to group up the enemies. Maybe you're able to get a little bit of a box, basically, and you try and go in that box, and you just want to funnel the robots in that. Now, this can be sort of hit or miss. You might find yourself after 5 minutes really, really struggling. And once you die, if all of you die after 5 minutes, you're honestly kind of screwed. So in those situations, it can work well until you get to 5 minutes, but I would really not recommend it unless you get that one specific map spawn. And otherwise, I'm not going to recommend it. Now here, I'll show a picture of the map spawn, and if you do get that one map spawn, then you can just go in that corner and stay there the whole time and try and get as many robots as possible. But otherwise, I'm going to recommend you not stay there. The other thing I'm going to recommend is if you are in one of those corners where you're trying to funnel all the robots into one really small place, don't do that versus the boss, because you might really struggle and you could find yourself sort of trapped in there. Another tip I'm going to recommend is if you're a thrower, if you're a dynamite, if you're a Barley, you want to try and focus on, one, of course, you want to try and hit as many enemies as possible, but two, if you're finding yourself not struggling dealing with robots, try and target the ranged robots, as you're going to be able to hit them much easier, and everyone else is first and foremost going to be targeting the melee guys, so you need to be targeting those ranged robots with your normal attacks, as you need to get those down as quickly as possible, because they're going to be the most annoying ones, and they're going to be up the longest amount of time, and they do deal a decent amount of damage, and they can be hard to deal with if you don't have a good position or a good angle on them. But as a thrower, you can deal with them a little bit easier than your other teammates. Now, once you get past the last boss, honestly, how good of a time you get depends heavily on how many boxer/charger robots you get. Unless you're using that map exploit, it's going to depend a lot on that, because those guys are easily the most difficult robots to deal with, as they just have the highest amount of health, and they basically make it so you can't hit multiple robots at the same time, because they just end up charging all over the map, and they end up in different places. And they also stop you from using your super certain times, because they're going to charge into you. They're definitely the most difficult to deal with, and how good of a time you get is definitely going to depend heavily on how many charger robots you get. But I mean, one of the biggest things, if you want to get a really good time as well, is going to be how value your supers are. If you're not able to hit 2 or 3 robots with your super, I might hesitate on using it. If you're past the last boss, you really, really, really want to get at least 2 robots with your Colt, Rico, Barley super, Frank super, whatever it is, you want to try and hit at least 2 robots. If you're not doing that, you're probably going to be stuck in the water afterwards, because you need to get your super back. If you're not able to get your super back quickly, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Now, maybe your teammates can cover you. Maybe. And the other situation, too, is if you have a boxer robot just charging in on you and he has a ton of health, you might just have to super him in order to stay alive. And there's not much you can do about that. That's where sometimes it does depend heavily on how many charger robots you get. But you still try and want to hit as many robots as possible. If you can hit at least 2, you're going to probably get at least half of your super back. If you're not able to, you might not get anywhere close. And you're going to be stuck in the water afterwards unless you have some teammates who have supers and they can cover for you. And then you have time to get your super back. And then you can try and get a value super later. But otherwise, you're going to be stuck in the water and you're probably going to end up losing within 30 seconds. Okay, guys, so keep those main tips in mind. You want to try and funnel the robots as much as possible into one lane, into one path. And then you want to try and get value supers, hitting at least 2+ robots. Also, save your supers for the bosses, for the first 2 bosses. Don't use them on the normal robots. It's really not worth it. You do not need to do it. You just want to try and get those bosses down as quickly as possible. After the 3rd boss, you can use your supers on those robots as they start to get a little bit more health, and you might need to maybe on the 18th, 19th, 20th, 20th wave. Then after the last boss, you just want to try and really focus on getting value supers. Try and getting 2 robots or more with every single super. If you can do that, and if you can keep that pan turret up, and you can deal with those charger robots, you can get a really, really good time. And if you're watching the gameplay, I had a free-to-play Barley, non-max Barley, non-max Pam, non-max Ricochet, non-max Frank. All of them were non-max. You definitely don't need max brawlers to get max keys consistently, but you do definitely need a team. It's going to be really hard to get any sort of max time consistently with randoms. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. Leave your best tips for Robo down below in the comments. I think everyone would appreciate it. But alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and I will catch you later.